Canto 3. Scaramouche. "And did you really walk?" said I, "on such a wretched night? I always fancied ghosts could fly, if not exactly in the sky, yet at a fairish height." "It's very well," said he, "for kings to soar above the earth, but phantoms often find that wings, like many other pleasant things, cost more than they are worth. Spectres, of course, are rich, and so can buy them from the elves, but we prefer to keep below. They're stupid company, you know, for any but themselves. For though they claim to be exempt from pride, they treat a phantom as something quite beneath contempt, just as no turkey ever dreamt of noticing a bantam." "They seem too proud," said I, "to go to houses such as mine. Pray, how did they contrive to know so quickly that the place was low, and that I kept bad wine?" "Inspector Kobold came to you," the little ghost began. Here I broke in. "Inspector who? Inspecting ghosts is something new. Explain yourself, my man." "His name is Kobold," said my guest, "one of the spectre order. You'll very often see him dressed in a yellow gown, a crimson vest, and a nightcap with a border. He tried the Brocken business first, but caught a sort of chill, so came to England to be nursed, and here it took the form of thirst, which he complains of still. Port wine, he says, when rich and sound, warms his old bones like nectar, and as the inns where it is found are his especial hunting ground, we call him the Inspector. I bore it like a man, this agonizing witticism, and nothing could be sweeter than my temper till the ghost began some most provoking criticism. "Cooks need not be indulged in waste, yet still you'd better teach them. Dishes should have some sort of taste. Pray, why are all the cruets placed where nobody can reach them? That man of yours will never earn his living as a waiter. Is that queer thing supposed to burn? It's far too dismal a concern to call a moderator. The duck was tender, but the peas were very much too old. And just remember, if you please, the next time you have toasted cheese, don't let them send it cold. You'll find the bread improved, I think, by getting better flour. And have you anything to drink that looks a little less like ink, and isn't quite so sour?" Then peering round with curious eyes, he muttered, "Goodness gracious!" and so went on to criticise. "Your room's an inconvenient size. It's neither snug nor spacious. That narrow window, I expect, serves but to let the dusk in. But please," said I, "to recollect 'twas fashioned by an architect who pinned his faith on Ruskin." "I don't care who he was, sir, or on whom he pinned his faith. Constructed by whatever law, so poor a job I never saw, as I'm a living wraith." "What a remarkable cigar! How much are they a dozen?" I growled, "No matter what they are, you're getting as familiar as if you were my cousin. Now that's a thing I will not stand, and so I tell you flat." "Aha!" said he, "we're getting grand," taking a bottle in his hand. "I'll soon arrange for that." And here he took a careful aim, and gaily cried, "Here goes!" I tried to dodge it as it came, but somehow caught it all the same, exactly on my nose. And I remember nothing more that I can clearly fix, till I was sitting on the floor, repeating, "2 and 5 are 4, but 5 and 2 are 6. What really passed I never learned, nor guessed. I only know that when at last my sense returned, the lamp, neglected, dimly burned. The fire was getting low. Through driving mists I seemed to see a thing that smirked and smiled, and found that he was giving me a lesson in biography, as if I were a child. Canto 4. His Nurture. Oh, when I was a little ghost, A merry time had we, each seated on his favourite post. We chumped and chawed the buttered toast they gave us for our tea. "That story is in print!" I cried. "Don't say it's not, because it's known as well as Bradshaw's Guide." The Ghost uneasily replied he hardly thought it was. "It's not in nursery rhymes, and yet I almost think it is. 3 little ghostesses were set on postesses, you know, and ate their buttered toastesses. I have the book, so if you doubt it—" I turned to search the shelf. "Don't stir," he cried. "We'll do without it. I now remember all about it. I wrote the thing myself. It came out in a monthly, or at least my agent said it did. Some literary swell who saw it thought it seemed adapted for the magazine he edited. My father was a brownie, sir. My mother was a fairy. The notion had occurred to her the children would be happier if they were taught to vary. The notion soon became a craze, and when it once began, she brought us all out in different ways. 1 was a pixie, 2 were fays, another was a banshee. The fetch and kelpie went to school and gave a lot of trouble. Next came a poltergeist and ghoul, and then 2 trolls, which broke the rule, a goblin and a double. If that's a snuff-box on the shelf," he added with a yawn, "I'll take a pinch. Next came an elf, and then a phantom, that's myself, and last a leprechaun. One day some spectres chanced to call, dressed in the usual white. I stood and watched them in the hall, and couldn't make them out at all. They seemed so strange a sight. I wondered what on earth they were, that looked all head and sack, but mother told me not to stare, and then she twitched me by the hair and punched me in the back. Since then I've often wished that I'd been a spectre born, but what's the use?" He heaved a sigh. "They are the ghost nobility, and look on us with scorn. My phantom life was soon begun when I was barely 6. I went out with an older one, and just at first I thought it fun, and learned a lot of tricks. I've haunted dungeons, castles, towers, wherever I was sent. I've often sat and howled for hours, drenched to the skin with driving showers upon a battlement. It's quite old-fashioned now to groan when you begin to speak. This is the newest thing in tone." And here it chilled me to the bone. He gave an awful squeak. "Perhaps," he added, "to your ear that sounds an easy thing. Try it yourself, my little dear. It took me something like a year with constant practising. And when you've learned to squeak, my man, and caught the double sob, you're pretty much where you began. Just try and gibber if you can, that's something like a job. I've tried it, and can only say I'm sure you couldn't do it, even if you practised night and day, unless you have a turn that way and natural ingenuity. Shakespeare, I think it is, who treats of ghosts in days of old, who gibbered in the Roman streets, dressed, if you recollect, in sheets. I must have found it cold. I've often spent £10 on stuff in dressing as a double, but though it answers as a puff, it never has effect enough to make it worth the trouble. Long bills soon quenched the little thirst I had for being funny. The setting up is always worst. Such heaps of things you want at first. One must be made of money. For instance, take a haunted tower, with skull, cross bones, and sheet. Blue lights to burn, say 2 an hour. Condensing lens of extra power, and set of chains complete. What with the things you have to hire, the fitting on the robe, and testing all the coloured fire, the outfit of itself would tire the patience of a Job. And then they're so fastidious, the haunted house committee. I've often known them make a fuss because a ghost was French, or Russ, or even from the city. Some dialects are objected to. For one, the Irish brogue is, and then for all you have to do, £1 a week they offer you, and find